Haircuts that make you look younger and also elegant. Our first haircut is the butterfly cut. It doesn't have a specific name in Portuguese because it actually became very well known outside of Brazil. Now, in recent years, it has been appearing a lot. It has become a hit because it is a very beautiful cut, very elegant. It usually has a nice amount of layers and it falls like a waterfall. This is actually what gives it the name butterfly cut because it imitates a butterfly wing. It is a little shorter in the front and a little longer in the back. In fact, because it is not such a difficult cut to do, many girls started doing it at home, and that is exactly why it became so popular. After all, it is not that difficult to do. Basically, if your hair is straight, you will take the same length in the front and in the back, making two ponytails, one on top of your head and one in the back. It's not at all complicated. I've done it myself at home, but it's the kind of cut that looks beautiful once you work on it. So, for this hair to show off its beauty, it usually needs to be brushed. That doesn't mean you can't do this cut on curly hair, but it won't look the same. The same goes for people with straightened hair. People with straightening treatment, brushing, regardless of whether it's a formaldehyde-free straightening brush. Straightened hair usually tends to look straight. I say this because I'm someone who also has straightened hair, so it's hard to get that ball with those beautiful curves that this cut brings. It doesn't mean you can't do it. You can do it, but it's usually harder on straightened hair. Those waves right at the ends, those curves tend not to hold. And on curly hair, as I said, it will look different. It won't look the same on straight hair or on wavy hair. So, you need to be careful when choosing this butterfly cut so you don't get disappointed, because it's very easy to see it in the salon and think, wow, it's going to look beautiful, and it really does. But what about at home? You're going to have the patience to do it in a bob. This is the kind of hair that requires you to put a bob in, use hairspray, and use mousse if you want that traditional butterfly cut that looks like you just left the salon. Number 2 is a cut that I consider beautiful, wonderful, very chic, like super elegant. It also tends to rejuvenate you. It will make you look younger, which is the French bob. The front bob is the French bob, so you can ask your hairdresser to give it a French bob. The main characteristic of this French bob is that it's very similar to the bob, so it tends to be short. It can end here, for example, here at chin level, a little higher, but it will generally have more movement. So, unlike that bob, you know, that Cleopatra hair, right, really straight, the French bob, it will have more movement, so it can have an intentional wave. It's different from having your hair cut straight, like you've cut it with a clipper, straight, from hair that you want to add a little more volume, a little more layers. It's a cut that looks great on different textures, so it looks great on straight hair, it looks great on wavy, curly and curly hair. But we need to be very careful about the shrinkage factor in the case of hair that has curls. So, if your hair is curly, when you cut this French bob, be very careful. You can't cut it while it's wet, especially if the salon you go to doesn't have experience with curly hair, frizzy hair. Otherwise, you'll ask for a French bob and you'll end up with short, bob-shaped hair because people will shrink it. As I told you, my hair is curly and straightened, but I have experience in this situation, asking for one thing and getting another, because the person didn't consider the shrinkage factor. But the bob shape itself is beautiful. It's wonderful. It brings this freshness. It brings this youthfulness. You only need to be careful with this cut if you are a woman with a larger chin. If your chin is a little more prominent, because it's a cut that if you have a large chin, it will make you look even more chin-like. But don't worry, because there are other cuts here that flatter women with larger chins. Number 3 is the pixie cut. The pixie cut is the Joãozinho cut, right, as it is usually called here in Brazil. The pixie cut is a very neutral cut. It's very practical, because you practically won't need to do anything, and you also won't be able to do much because it's very short, but that ends up bringing a lot of practicality. It's a cut that I think is great for those who don't want to waste a lot of time on a daily basis. Minimalist women, for example, this cut here will fit like a glove. It also brings a lot of youthfulness, and it gives you a lot of room to play with other elements. So, since hair ends up not being one of the main visual elements, you can be a little more daring with your makeup. For example, guys, it looks beautiful. I've seen so many girls who get this really short cut, a real pixie cut, and then they really go all out with their makeup. It looks simply wonderful. The pixie cut can be done on all hair textures, so you can do it on straight or very curly hair. So, even curly hair can be done easily. In fact, guys, all the cuts I'm showing in today's video. I brought all of them with examples on straight, wavy, and curly hair, because I know it's very difficult to find videos on YouTube that show hair in different curls. So I tried hard. Of course it's difficult, but I tried to bring as much variety as possible. When we're talking about pixie, you have to be careful with the salon you go to, because otherwise you might end up with practically shaved hair. So you have to be very clear about what you want. When you take your hair to the salon, look for references that are in line with your hair in its natural state. So, oh, I like to blow dry it, that's fine, but look for references of your hair as it is. So, if your hair has a curl, for example, a box cut, you won't go there with references of a straight pixie cut, because when you cut that pixie cut and it curls, you won't like it because it won't be what you had in mind. And blow drying and straightening super short hair is more difficult, so keep that in mind. I speak from experience. I've had my hair cut in a pixie cut, and then over time it started to grow and I started to hate my hair. Why? Because I went in with a preference for straight hair. Another detail, this is the kind of cut that you'll have to keep redoing all the time. This hair loses its shape very quickly, so you'll have to be there every month redoing it, doing the little clips, fixing it. I don't recommend it to women who hate salons because it will force you to go to the salon a lot. I also don't recommend it to those who have super long hair and suddenly decided to cut it. Don't do it. You'll be shocked and then you'll regret it. If your hair is really long, shorten it over time until you get to this super short one, because I've seen countless people who regret it. Number 4 is beautiful and it's a classic. I'm talking about the long bob. The long bob is the long bob. Here in Brazil we also have that bob, but the bob has kind of been forgotten. It seems like it disappeared from fashion, so I wanted to bring more of the long bob. The long bob is a very traditional, very elegant and very sophisticated hairstyle. I highly recommend it to women who really like this more elegant style. It's the kind of hairstyle that makes anyone who comes up with a long bob say, "Wow, man, you look like a powerful woman." Quote, this hair type can have 1 or 2 layers, but in general this long bob will be straighter. Whenever we talk about a bob hairstyle, we are talking about hair with a straighter base, which is highly recommended for those with thin hair. That's right. If you are a woman with thinner hair, if your hair is finer, I highly recommend this cut for you, because the fact that it has a straight base, right, the bottom part cut straighter, will give it more volume and weight. When we are talking about very voluminous hair, curly hair, then you can add 1 or 2 layers underneath the long bob to take away some of that volume, because otherwise the person ends up looking like a triangle, right? As a curly girl, I know what it's like to cut your hair straight at the base and have it look like a huge triangle when it dries. So, for curly and frizzy hair, it may be necessary to add a little lightness through layers, but in general, the long bob will have a straighter base and will flatter those with fine, thin hair. If that's your case, well, this hairstyle is perfect for you. And it's a hairstyle that tends to bring, as I said, that air of an organized, elegant, sophisticated woman. So, if your style as a whole is an elegant style, the long bob is perfect for you. And tell me what your haircut is. Mine is a straighter cut at the base with bangs like this. I love bangs. I'm addicted to bangs. Tell me yours. Take the opportunity and help me by leaving today's magic words in the comments, which are hair 2025. By using these magic words, you help me a lot to continue bringing you videos here every day. So, I'm counting on your help, okay? While you comment, we'll continue with the video. Number 5 is the longers or long layers. This hair is also very beautiful. I would say that it gives a slightly more romantic look because we're talking about hair that has movement due to the layers, but they are longer layers. It's a very youthful hair. It's a hair that really gives that younger girl look. It gives that 2000s look. It brings that rejuvenation, but it's a hair that I only recommend if you have a lot of hair, a lot of volume on your head. Why? Because since we're talking about layers and long layers here, it's very easy to aim for a hair full of beautiful layers and such and end up with thin hair that looks like it was chemically cut. When we're going to do this hair in long layers, we have to keep in mind that the layers will generally take away volume. So, what they will do in general with straighter hair is give the appearance of thinner hair. So, if you already have super fine, super flat hair that doesn't really draw much attention to itself because of this factor, I'm telling you, don't do this here. It's different from curly hair. In curly hair, these longer layers will even add a little more volume because the hair on top will be lighter and then it will rise. It will add volume. It will create a different shape. But in straight hair, if this is done poorly, it will look like you had a chemical cut, which is not what we want. I also don't recommend these long layers for straightened hair. Why? Because straightened hair tends to have straight ends. That's my case. If I cut it like this, I'll have to keep brushing it, applying hairspray to try to make the ends curved and pretty, because that's not what happens naturally with straightened hair, okay girls? So I don't recommend it for fine hair. I don't recommend it for straightened hair. I'll recommend it for people with thick, heavy hair, lots of hair, a lot of hair density. I highly recommend it. And curly girls who want to add volume without losing length will also look divine and wonderful with these longer layers. One cut that I think is really cute is the long pix. The long pix is like a pixie cut, but longer. So it's not super short hair, right? And it's not long hair either. It's short hair, but with a little bit of a longer strand, let's say. It's not quite a bob, but it's not quite a pix either. And I think that's the charm of this cut. It's a very pretty cut, but you have to be careful with it because it can age you. This cut here became very popular in the 90s, in the 2000s. Women over 40 always got this cut, so it ended up being a bit dated in that sense. So it's a cut that, yes, can age you, especially if it's combined with other characteristics, like lots of highlights, lots of fraying, and lots of blonde hair. Because that's how we saw it back in the 2000s. It was long hair, with lots of layers. And look, if you take hair that's already straight and thin and you do highlights and layers, that hair ends up looking even thinner, even more layers. It will give the appearance of having little hair on your head. So, what do I recommend? If you're going to get this cut, give preference to a single color. So, either it's going to be all blonde, all black, all brown, all red, and try to add more movement. It's a cut that also looks wonderful on different hair textures, so there's a lot of variety. Yes, it doesn't matter if your hair is curly, it will also fit this cut. But take into account the shrinkage factor. Every time we talk about curly hair, especially for shorter cuts, we have to be careful about the shrinkage factor. Otherwise you'll aim for long hair and end up with a traditional pixie, really short, tight to the head. So, be careful with that. If your hair is curly, I recommend you go to one of those salons, like natural beauty salons, where people are already used to dealing with the shrinkage factor, so you don't end up disappointed. But in general, I think it's a cut that's cute, super elegant, practical, but just like pixie, it will also require you to go to the salon regularly. So, if you don't like going to the salon every month or two, it really won't work for you. Number 7, it's the long 90s cut. This hair here has some layers, but it won't be as layered. It won't be as layered. It will have a cut there that usually comes in a U shape at the back or in a V shape. It was a very typical cut from the 90s. It is beautiful. It has this movement. It is a super feminine and very romantic cut, extremely delicate. I think it is a cut that looks good on all ages. It is a cut that also looks good on women with larger chins. So, when you are a woman, I told you, gosh, don't cut the bob because it will highlight your chin. This one will have the opposite effect. It will not highlight your chin, so, it is a better cut for you. So, we already understand here that women with chins should avoid short cuts and favor longer cuts. The same thing goes for people with larger features, so big eyes, big nose, big mouth, people who have larger features on their face. I recommend longer hair. It will harmonize better. This is a very neutral hair. It is a hair that, as I said, looks good on most people. Its length is medium to long, so it tends to be around the bust. Of course, you can make it longer, or you can make it a little shorter. There are few layers here, so it won't take up an absurd amount of hair. If you have curly hair, this is one of the most practical cuts you can have. It's low maintenance. You won't need to go to the salon all the time to have it maintained. So, I think it's a hairstyle that's very practical. It's very everyday, and since it's a longer length, you can play around with it. You can style it a lot. You can have a little extra flair with it that you can't do with other cuts. This is a cut that I recommend to 90% of Brazilian women, except for those who really don't like it. Long hair. And if you like this video, you'll love all the videos on the Magoda channel, because there are videos here every day, always around 7:30 at night. Come have dinner while watching Magamoda. This way, you stay well informed and become more beautiful by knowing the trends and beauty tips. Don't waste time, subscribe, take advantage and activate the bell so that YouTube will notify you if there is not a new video every day. While you do this, we will continue with the video. Number 8 is the curls. The kurtz is a type of fringe that I wanted to bring here as well, since it is a cut that is very famous. It is not new. It is not from this year. It is a cut that has already become popular. The curtain fringe is nothing more than a fringe that is divided in the middle. This gives more movement to the hair. It can be added to more layers, or it can be added to a slightly straighter base. I think it is a type of hairstyle that is beautiful, practical, and gives that princess look. So, if you are a woman with a more romantic style, I think it suits it very well. It also goes well with curly hair, okay? Of course, it will not look the same as straight hair, because with straight hair we will have one shade and with curly hair it will have another. Now, talking about straightened hair, I have straightened hair and bangs that are similar to short bangs and will need to be styled. If your hair is straightened, it won't look like this. I'm all set, I'm ready. No, you'll need to wash it, you'll need to style it. And here's another warning for those who want to cut their bangs. Bangs are very cute, very cute. I love my bangs, but they're hard work. Every time you go out, you'll need to wash them. You'll need to wash them practically every day. Even if you don't wash your hair, you'll have to wash them because they get dirty easily, lose their shape, and lose their style. So it's a little more work. Don't think you're the only woman with bangs who has to do this, because it's normal, okay? Anyone who has bangs already knows that it's a piece of hair that's always in your face. It'll get oily, you'll need to wash it, you'll need to brush it, you'll need to straighten it to look nice. If your hair is curly, I don't recommend straight bangs. I recommend these bangs. They look more natural, they look prettier, and they also look more romantic. Depending on the shape of your face, straight bangs don't look as good. Straight bangs are a tricky business. Not everyone looks good with straight bangs. This cut here has a lot of layers. I really recommend it for bolder, braver women who also have a lot of hair. It's not a cut that I recommend for those with a traditional style. Why? Because it's very modern, it's very youthful. It's a more eye-catching cut. It's a cut that tends to draw attention, and it's a cut that if your hair is thin, this will disappear. It will look like you're losing your hair because it will disappear. It's a cut that I highly recommend for those with curly, wavy, and frizzy hair. Straight hair will need styling. It will need a little extra care. You will need to use a diffuser, do some finger curling, do something to activate this cut, because otherwise this cut will disappear. It will look like a chemical cut. So be careful, because it is a different cut. It is a striking cut. It is a youthful cut. It is a cut for those who have style, for those who are fashionistas. If you are very traditional, if you are very sophisticated, elegant, don't go for this direction. If your hair is very, very straight, that thin straight, that straight that falls flat, I also don't recommend it because it will look weird. Number 10 is the fringe, especially the French fringe. The French fringe has a slightly straighter fall, but it has a slight layering, giving a little more softness to this cut. This fringe can be applied to both longer and shorter hair, so it will depend much more on the shape of your face than on the length. Because it's a fringe, it will take away volume from your hair, so be very careful if your hair is already thin. Generally speaking, fringes tend to make you look younger, so if you have, for example, a lot of expression lines here on your forehead, if you have that famous 11 here between your eyebrows, you'll benefit a lot from fringes like this. For example, I have a little wrinkle here, you know, the one right in the middle of my eyebrow that gives me that angry look, and I use my fringe precisely to hide it. In other words, if we can't get Botox, we'll cut the fringe there. Because it's a straight fringe, you need to be a little careful and you'll need to cut it quite often. So, it's not the kind of fringe that you'll cut once in your life and then only do after a year, like side-swept fringes. No, this one here once a month. You'll have to get it done, either at the salon or at home. I don't recommend this fringe for curly hair, because it tends to look weird, especially if your hair is quite long. Now, if your curly hair is a little shorter and has a lot of layers, then this fringe also works very well, always remembering the shrinkage factor, because it tends to be detrimental, especially when it comes to fringes. I don't recommend cutting fringes at home at all, because the amount of people who aim for one thing and end up doing something else is huge. I recommend that you go to a salon, preferably a good salon, a quality salon, because then you'll be able to cut your fringe. The hairdresser will analyze your hair, its texture, and its fall. And remember once again that fringes are hard work. You'll need to style them every day. You'll need to wash them frequently. Sometimes you'll need to wash them more than once a day. For example, I wash my fringe several times a day because I go to the gym and come back. So, it's something that takes a bit of work. Okay? I'm not going to lie to you and say that it's something you do and it's practical. No. In general, it's a bit of work. So, I recommend it to those who really like this style. But it looks beautiful and it really rejuvenates. Just by covering this area of the forehead, we usually gain about 5, 6, sometimes 10 years. Just because this fringe will hide the wrinkles on the forehead. I think that every woman should try it, even if only once in her life. And speaking of things you have to try, you have to try the pants that are back in fashion. Guys, there are several pants from the 2000s that are back in fashion now in 2025 and you don't want to miss out on them. Want to know what they are? You probably already have them in your closet. So, click on this video that's appearing on your screen. I'm sure you already have at least one of them. I'll see you there.